Hey guys, hey peeps, thanks for checking out my latest video. Gonna try to get this up as quick as possible. Right now there's about 45 minutes till the 1 o'clock games on Sunday. Main slate, week 9 Draftkings and Fanduel and Draftkings Reignmakers. I just wanted to pass along information from a premium DFS projection site that I've been using that I have access to this season. They've had some nice calls on various things as it goes along. So this is where they stand as about an hour ago. They update it pretty often based on injuries and whatnot, so maybe changes up. I'm going to sort of go over tiers, ownership, leverage, some cheapies and some ones that can be boom and have values on them. I won't lay the exact numbers out for the actual projection on the highest scorers, but so this is for DraftKings, and then I'll do FanDuel. This sort of also applies to Reignmakers when you're just looking at the flat out who the highest scorers are. And I grouped them by tiers, sort of like where the numbers fell in, but then just the names themselves are in alphabetical order within the tier. But Josh Allen is basically in a tier by himself, and Herbert and Murray are in the next tier, and then Rodgers and Tua. And like I said, these have changed even since this morning. So, and then a further down tier would be Burrow, Carr, Fields, Lawrence, and Smith. Running backs, Eckler is a tier above. Second tier, Jacobs and Stevenson. Next tier, Etienne, Jones, and Mixon. Next tier, Cook, Fournette, and Walker. And then further down, Foreman and Jackson. Wide receivers, and this is just flat out the highest scorers. And like I said, I tiered them based on where their point total came in relation to the others in their position. Wide receiver, Diggs, Hill, Hopkins, and Kupp, top tier. Adams and Jefferson, next tier. St. Brown and Waddle, next tier. Further down, Higgins, Lockett, Metcalf, and Moore in the next tier. Tight ends, they actually had Moreau slightly above, although these were sort of bunched slightly in his own tier, with Waller being out. Next tier, Ingram, Ertz, Everett, Higbee, Pitts, and Tanyan. Next tier, Conklin and Hawkinson. Defenses, top ones they have are Buffalo, Cincinnati, Minnesota, New England, and Tampa Bay. These kickers, that might be for your deep Reignmakers lineup. This is from another site, but the top kickers they have is Bass, Carlson, Koo, McPherson, Myers, and Suckup. Okay, so here's the ownership projected currently on DraftKings that they have for the main slate. Now, this is what could be considered the chalk, and the chalk has done well in the last few weeks. So, you know, this kind of thing where you probably want to have a good amount of chalk in there, although you do need, one or two differentiators most likely if you're going to hit in the big GPP tournaments. Some of the percentages I don't think are as high as in previous weeks. In particular, some of the stacks aren't as beloved, I would say. But these are basically all the ones over 10%. For the quarterbacks, the ones over 8%. So Fields and Allen in double digits. Fields getting momentum, it seems like, because he's cheap on there. And then Smith and Rodgers. The running backs, these are the highest percentages and the highest almost period. Etienne, Stevenson, Jones, and Eckler, 36, 32, 28, 25. Then Walker at 15. Jacobs, Jackson, and Mixon all around 11%. So these are the most highly owned players projected. And then the green are the ones that sort of are the highest, and yellows like medium high. Wide receivers, a little more diversity. Palmer, Moore, Hill, McLaurin, and Hopkins, all over 15%. Then Diggs, St. Brown, Mooney, Kirk, Godwin, Adams, Jefferson, and Boyd, over 10%. Tight ends, Ingram, the highest, very highly owned. Tanyan, highly owned, and also Everett to some degree. Defense, they're heavily on Carolina. It's a low salary. Also, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, New England, a little bit of ownership, fairly heavily owned. So leverage, this is this site running simulations based on their projections and coming up with optimal lineups and then comparing those to the ownership of the public. So leverage is ones that they project are under-owned. So potentially could give you bang for the buck in the large tournaments if they come in. So the green ones are the ones that stand out the most, and yellow and then orange. But among the quarterbacks, Carr and Murray are the leaders, but not huge leverage amounts. And then Goff, Allen, Jones, Mariota, and Stafford also mildly, so that means like they even have Allen slightly underowned. Running backs, the three that are above the pack there are Mixon, Jacobs, and Cook as being underowned. Also Robinson from the Skins and Fournette. Also Carter and Jackson, that's the Jets and Indy. Wide receivers, they actually have Kupp a little bit above the pack now. That's changed on ownership versus where, potential leverage on it. Waddle high also. St. Brown next down, relatively high. And then lesser Diggs, Pettis, Dobbs, Watson. They've had some changing on their Green Bay numbers. I'm not sure if Lazard's playing. They had Dobbs and what's his name? Tanyan really high, but I feel like they might have been bringing him down a little bit. Wilson and Adams. Tight ends, Moreau with Waller out. Mitchell on Detroit. Double check if he's going to be the starter yourself. Hawkinson. Defense is a little bit of leverage on Tampa Bay, the Rams, Washington, and Minnesota. So their current best values, this is basically dividing their projection by their salary, and these are in order. And then I just highlighted ones that are under 6,000 or under 5,000, under 4,000, depending. So the best values: Allen, Rodgers, Carr, Fields, Murray, Lawrence, Herbert. And I sort of had a cutoff of where like decent points are. Allen, Rodgers, Carr, Fields, Murray, Lawrence, Herbert, Smith, Stafford, Tua, and Mariota. Cheaper ones there are Rodgers, Carr, Fields, Lawrence, Smith, Stafford, and Mariota. Running backs, and again, the value is basically the points projected divided by the salary. Stevenson, Mixon, Etienne, Eckler, Jacobs, Jones, and Walker, and Jackson. And the only relatively cheap one there is Jackson. So I looked at some other running backs. Robinson, Carter, Williams from Detroit, Gibson, Singletary, White from Tampa Bay, and Henderson. Again, check your potential playing times on those type of things. Wide receivers: Hopkins, Hill, Kupp, Brown, Diggs, Lockett, Adams, Moore. These are all in order, best values. Waddle, Palmer. I think he should have been cheap. Wilson, Mooney, Raymond, Metcalf, and Jones. So the best cheaper ones there: Moore, Wilson, Mooney, Raymond, Jones. I think Palmer's cheap. I have to double check. Tight ends: Moreau, Ingram, Tanyan, Conklin, Mitchell, and Higbee. Again, just there, sort of like under 3,500. You can see Mitchell's very cheap. Defenses: Tampa Bay, Carolina, Minnesota, Washington, Arizona, and Seattle. Under 2,500 on those three. Then I'll do Fanduel here in a second as well, quickly, because I know I want to get this up, and they take time to process YouTube into HD and all that stuff. 90th. Okay, so this is what they show for 90th percentile. So this is like if they boomed, I believe, by their model. Then I ranked it by values, and then ones that sort of qualified as having a high value, like they can get a high total. So on there, it's Allen, Fields, Carr, Murray, Smith, Stafford, Lawrence, Herbert, and Mariota. Like, for example, they have Rodgers as a value, but not in a boom thing. They've had Rodgers relatively high all week, but it's sort of like that's what this shows, I guess, is that they don't think even if he goes off, he's not going to put up mad points. And the lower price ones there are Fields, Carr, Smith, Stafford, Lawrence, and Mariota. Running backs: Stevenson, Mixon, Jacobs, Etienne, Eckler, Jones, Walker, Fournette. And again, this is value based on 90th percentile scoring. So it takes into account salary, not just flat out the number. Fournette, Jackson, Cook, Mostert, Foreman, Robinson, and Singletary. The cheaper ones there are Jackson, Robinson, and Singletary. The wide receivers, they have a lot more. There's more range of ones that can boom out there. So value-wise: Hopkins, Hill, Diggs, Kupp, Waddle, Adams, St. Brown, Lockett, Moore, Palmer, Metcalf, Kirk, Mooney, Dobbs, Samuel, that's Washington, Wilson, the Jets, Jefferson, McLaurin, and even here Boyd, Raymond is Detroit, Higgins, Myers, Zay Jones, Carter, that's Carter from the Chargers, and Moore, that's DJ Moore, I believe that's DJ Moore. There's several Moores. So the cheaper ones there are Palmer, Kirk, Mooney, Dobbs, Samuel, Wilson, McLaurin, Raymond, Myers, Jones, Carter, Moore. Tight ends: Moreau, Ingram, Higbee, Tanyan, Mitchell, Everett, Pitts, and Conklin. Moreau, Ingram, Mitchell, and Conklin being the cheaper ones there. So on FanDuel, slightly different scoring and projections. Top tier quarterbacks, Allen. Next tier is Murray. Next tier is Herbert, Rodgers, and Tua. Top tier running back is Eckler. Next tier is Etienne, Jacobs, Jones, Mixon, and Stevenson. Next tier is Cook, Fournette, and Walker. Wide receivers, top tier is Diggs, Hill, Hopkins, and Kupp. Next tier is Adams. Next tier is Jefferson, St. Brown, and Waddle. So, like, you can see Jefferson not that high there. Tight end, Everett, Moreau, Pitts, and Tanyan, top tier. Next tier, Conklin, Ingram, Ertz, Gesicki, Higbee, and Hawkinson. Defenses, top tier, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Minnesota, New England, Tampa Bay. Projected ownership on FanDuel, Allen, 17%. These quarterbacks near 10%, closer, Rodgers, Murray, Herbert, Fields, Smith. Running backs, 20% plus. Jones, Etienne, Eckler, Stevenson, Jackson, 10%-ish. Jacobs, Mixon, Walker, Mostert. Wide receivers, Hill close to 20%. These between 10 and 15. Hopkins, St. Brown, Adams, Palmer, Diggs, DJ Moore, Godwin, Kupp, Kirk, and Jefferson. Tight ends, Tanyan, 16, Ingram, 13, Everett, 12. Defense is a little more balanced there than DraftKings. Carolina, 11, New England, 9, Cincinnati, 8, Indy, 7. I think defenses are one where differentiation can happen in the GPPs. It's like almost like if you're entering a ton of lineups, you almost want to have one of every defense in case they go off for 20 and are the only one. The highest leverage they have on FanDuel, and the green are like the highest leverage. Yellow are next and orange are the next. So Murray, Allen, and Fields. So Murray and Allen, they say, will give you leverage there. Mixon and Kupp being the leaders, if they come in high, are under-owned. Jacobs, also Robinson, Cook, Fournette, Kupp, Waddle, Hopkins, Diggs, and Adams. Also Jefferson, but Dobbs with an asterisk because the Green Bay projections are a little wonky, I think. Tight ends, Mitchell, also Moreau and Hawkinson's. Defenses, the Bears, Miami, and Vegas. The best values, again, these are based on just purely points divided by salary in order. So the highest scorers, when they're a tier, I just did them alphabetically. Okay, so these aren't in order, except the tiers are in order. The values, quarterback, Allen, Murray, Herbert, Rodgers, Carr, and Lawrence. And I highlight the ones that are relatively cheaper salary-wise. Running backs, Stevenson, Eckler, Etienne, Mixon, Jones, Jackson, Jacobs, and Fournette. Wide receivers, Hopkins, Kupp, Hill, Adams, St. Brown, and Diggs. Tight ends, Tanyan and Moreau. Defenses, Miami, Tampa Bay, and Minnesota. So St. Brown and Miami, I guess, are relatively cheap for their positions. Then looking again at the 90th percentile, sort of like the booms, who are the best values and among those which are relatively cheap salaries. And these are in order, again, based on like a 90th percentile projected score divided by their salary, basically, for a value. Allen, Murray, Fields, Herbert, Stafford, Carr, Smith, Lawrence, and Mariota. And I sort of used a cutoff, I think, of sort of like a point total or a value total. And there, Stafford, Carr, and Lawrence are cheaper. I guess Mariota's not there. I don't have as much in my FanDuel account. I don't have very little in there compared to my Draftkings. So I didn't focus on that as much. Running backs, Stevenson, Mixon, Jacobs, Jones, Eckler, Etienne, Jackson, Fournette, Cook, Walker, Mostert, Singletary, Robinson, Foreman, and Carter. So there's like a little more sleepers down there. And again, Jackson's low salary for Indy. Wide receivers, Hill, Diggs, Hopkins, Adams, Kupp. And like this basically means they have these guys. And I know there's a little below that, but like if they had their best day, they could put up good points type of thing, 90th percentile. Adams, Kupp, Waddle, St. Brown, Samuel, that's the Redskins. Kirk, Dobbs, Moore, Metcalf, Palmer, Jefferson, Wilson, the Jets, Davis, the Buffalo, Boyd from Cincy. I mean, some of these salaries are varied, but a little bit under like the 7,000 threshold, I believe. Lockett, Mooney, Higgins, and McLaurin. Tight ends, The boom potential is not huge on these, even for ones like Pitts for some reason, what they show for the number. But Moreau, Everett, Tanyan, Mitchell's, Cheap, Pitts, Ingram, Hawkinson, and Gesicki. Defenses, boom, the actual total amounts that they, can be seen on a projection aren't that high for these either. Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Miami, Minnesota, New England, Vegas, Carolina, and Green Bay. Miami, Vegas, and Carolina are cheap. All right, hopefully this is useful to you in a little bit, hopefully somewhat, and hopefully their information is got some nice stuff this week. I know there's not a whole lot of time, so good luck in the Draftkings Reignmakers and your DFS and fantasy football this week. All right, have a good one, guys. Thanks.